Since then, Hugo Hu has been a soldier and has been highly valued. However, in that era, the country was in chaos and warlords were fighting each other. A team of 100 or so people could rule a region. Today you destroyed me, and tomorrow he destroyed you. Few forces could survive for a long time. The warlord that Hugo Hu followed was not powerful to begin with. Within a year, it was beaten to pieces by another warlord in a battle for territory. Some of the troops died or fled. The warlord leader who promoted Hugo Hu was also shot and killed in the melee. After the defeat, Hugo Hu ran back to his hometown. At this time, his broken house had collapsed long ago. He fled in a hurry and had no money on him. He had not eaten for 2 consecutive days. His addiction to smoking came back. He had no choice but to sell his pistol to the bandits in exchange for some opium and food to solve the urgent problem. He thought, this is not going to work. This little bit of food and opium can only support 3 to 5 days at most. What should he do after he eats and smokes all of them? At this time, he remembered what the ghost attached to the white paper woman said. When he is too poor to live, he will go to the deserted graveyard in Shizanlipu to find a lonely grave without a tombstone. She said there are gold and silver jewelry buried with her. At this time, Hugo Hu had served in the army and fought in wars, and he was much braver than before. Hugo Hu had heard a lot of tomb robbing stories from an old soldier in the army. Tomb robbing is also called grave robbing in folk, which can make a fortune, but if caught, you will lose your head, so he didn't dare to act during the day. He made up his mind, lit a lantern on a night with a gray moon, carried a shovel, and went to the cemetery in Shizanlipu. The audience may ask, what is a hairy moon? It means that there are no clouds in the sky, but the moonlight is not bright, very hazy. Of course, modern people know that this is a meteorological phenomenon scientifically called a moon halo, which means that the weather will change and the wind will blow. But who in the countryside of that era understood these scientific explanations? In some places, the country people call this kind of moon a hairy moon, and some people say that this kind of night with dim moonlight is the time when lonely ghosts love to come out and wander around. When he arrived at the place, he first drank half a caddy of liquor he brought with him to boost his courage. That night, the moon was cold and the stars were cold. The wind was whistling, and pieces of phosphorescent fire were floating in the graves. From time to time, there were a few chirping and squeaky sounds of strange birds. The wind lantern in his hand flickered, and it seemed that it could go out at any time. Although Hugo Hu had just drunk wine at this time, he was still scared by this ghost place and broke into a cold sweat. This time the half-caddy of liquor was drunk in vain, and it all went out through the sweat pores. Fortunately, this was a wild graveyard. No one knew what era it was built. There was no human habitation nearby. He was not afraid of being heard even if he shouted. Hugo Hu sang a few folk songs to give himself courage, but he didn't know many songs, so he ran out of words after singing a few sentences. He simply sang the most familiar Wu Zhengxiang Si tune and Shi Ba Mo. Hugo Hu gritted his teeth and trembled to the center of this large graveyard. There was indeed a solitary grave without a tombstone dot in this wild graveyard. This grave looked so different. In addition to the lack of a tombstone, the strangest thing about this grave was that the coffin was not under the mound. but stood on the grave mound, revealing most of it. The coffin was very new, with 18 layers of red lacquer on it, shining brightly under the waning moon. It glowed with a strange light. Hugo Hu was a little confused in his heart. Why was the coffin placed like this? It was really weird. I was afraid it had some kind of reputation. But since I'm here, wouldn't it be a waste if I don't open it and take a look? If I don't have money to buy food, I'll starve to death. And if I don't have money to smoke opium, I'll suffocate to death. It's better to be strangled to death by ghosts. I've been bullied all my life. Damn it, I'll go all out today and go all the way to the end. I made up my mind and swung the iron shovel to dig up the soil that buried the lower half of the coffin. The whole coffin appeared in front of me. Hugo Hu was a heavy smoker and had poor physical strength. He was exhausted after digging the little soil. He didn't rush to open the coffin. He sat on the ground and took out the hibiscus cream he brought with him and inhaled a little into his nose. The brain was stimulated by opium, and the nerves were also excited. He gritted his teeth and stood up, pried open the lid of the coffin with an iron shovel, and the corpse inside was a beautiful woman with a lifelike face, but the powder on her face was very thick, and there were 2 large patches of red rouge on both sides of her face. Against the background of the white powder, it looked like 2 red plasters were pasted. She was wearing a phoenix crown and a red silk auspicious robe, and she was dressed like a bride. This female corpse was definitely not the big-faced woman he had seen 2 years ago, and the paperman was asked to dig the grave 2 years ago. After so long, even if the female corpse had just been buried at that time, it should have rotted after 2 years. Could it be that she turned into a zombie? But at this time, Hugo Hu had no time to care about so many things. All he could see were the jewelry on the body of the female corpse in the coffin. These gold, silver, and gems sparkled seductively under the light of the wind lamp, as well as the silver dollars wrapped in red paper and many gold bars placed beside her for burial. This time he made a fortune. Hugo Hu reached out to grab the emerald ring on the female corpse's hand. As soon as he stretched out his hand, the female corpse in the coffin suddenly turned over and grabbed his wrist. The force was so great that the long nails like steel hooks sank more than an inch into the flesh on Hugo Hu's wrist, and he couldn't get away. Hugo Hu was so painful that he was in pain and fear. He didn't know what to do for a while. The female corpse opened her eyes and shot out 2 eerie cold lights from her eyes. Hugo Hu was touched by her eyes and trembled with coldness, as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and even his breath came out with white steam. The female corpse sneered and said, "You're indeed a money-obsessed kid. A lowly person like you would do anything as long as you have money. I think you have a useless heart, so I will keep it for you first." Hugo Hu heard that the other party wanted his heart. How could he do it, and hurriedly said, "No, no." The female corpse did not allow him to say more, tore off his clothes, and scratched his chest with long nails. A living human heart jumped out of Hugo Hu's chest. The female corpse reached out and grabbed it, swallowed it into her mouth with a bloody mouthful, and swallowed it whole without chewing. Hugo Hu was shocked, looked down and saw a scar on his chest. He didn't feel any pain, but felt that his consciousness was getting more and more blurred, and his heart was empty. He couldn't remember what happened just now, and kowtowing to the female corpse on the ground, The female corpse sat on the top of the upright coffin and said to Hugo Hu coldly, "Now you are my puppet. I will not treat you badly. I will definitely give you wealth and honor. You lead 8,864 women to this cemetery for me. Let me eat their hearts and livers. If there is any mistake, I will take your life first." How could Hugo Hu dare not disobey her orders at this time? The book said that the female corpse was a 100-year-old corpse demon. In order to avoid the disaster, she could not leave this hiding cemetery for the time being, so she designed to trick Hugo Hu, a greedy man, to dig the grave, and then coerced and lured him to capture innocent women for her to eat alive. After she had eaten the hearts and livers of 64 women, even the gods in the lower world could not stand her. Hugo Hu left the Shisanlipu cemetery in a hurry. He was so scared that he was shitting and pissing. After returning, he stole a pair of pants from the neighbor's house to change into. I thought this time I was in trouble. I didn't even have a wife, so where could I find a woman for this monster? I also thought that something important seemed to have been taken away by the monster, but I couldn't remember what it was. Anyway, it was very important. If I couldn't find a woman to give it to her, I would lose my life. What should I do? While thinking about all sorts of things, he suddenly felt 2 big gold bars in the pocket of the smelly pants he had just changed. They were the reward given to him by the owner of the female corpse. Hugo Hu frowned and came up with a bad idea. Alas, in order to survive, he could only betray his conscience. When he thought of the word conscience, he felt weird, but he couldn't think too much now. The most important thing was that it was better to live than to die. He was immoral. The next morning, he went to the county town to exchange the gold bars for cash, found a tobacco shop and smoked a lot, and spent another $10 to buy a girl of 17 or 18 years old in a poor mountain village. In the early years of the Republic of China, although the human trafficking was prohibited, the people were too poor to survive, and the selling of children was common. The government could not prohibit it, and this law was in name only. After buying the girl on the way, Hugo Hu told her that he bought her to be his wife, and told her not to worry, and that we would live a good life together. "If you follow me, I will let you eat delicious food, drink spicy drinks, wear gold and silver in the future." The girl's name was Yao Kui. The country girl was thin-skinned, and she didn't dare to look up at him with a red face. She let him walk with her without saying a word. Hugo Hu led a small donkey carrying Zhu Kui, and went straight to the deserted grave in Shisanlipu that night, while the moon was dark and the wind was high. The mountain road was rugged and difficult to travel. Hugo Hu was afraid of missing the time, so he hurried on his way. On the way, he met a feng shui master named Sun. Mr. Sun was a famous master in the province. He was born with yin and yang eyes. He could not only read feng shui and tell fortunes, but also knew the magic of Jingjue and the 5 elements. When Mr. Sun saw Hugo Hu, he found that his face was vaguely covered with a layer of black air. He counted with his fingers and was really surprised. He hurriedly stopped him and asked, "Sir, what are you rushing to do in such a hurry?" Hugo Hu said impatiently that I have something urgent to do, so don't block the way. Mr. Sun suddenly shouted, "I only ask you one question, you walking corpse. Where is your heart and liver?" When these words came out, Hugo Hu was hit by a wake-up call and hurriedly knelt on the ground, begging Mr. Sun for help. Mr. Sun helped him up and said, "Although you are corrupt, you have not committed a serious crime. You must know that you can turn back. It is not difficult for me to save you, but you must first worship me as your master and quit smoking." Hugo Hu heard him say that he wanted him to quit smoking opium, which would be better than taking his own life. However, after careful consideration, life is more important than opium. If you keep the Green Mountains, you will not be afraid of running out of firewood. I will first ask him to save me from the entanglement of the female corpse. In the future, when he is not prepared, I will continue to smoke my lotus paste. Am I afraid that he will find out? After making up his mind, he counted out 8 times to Mr. Sun on the mountain road and performed the ceremony of worshiping his master. Then Mr. Sun arranged everything properly and told Hugo Hu to follow the plan, while he followed behind to protect him from a distance. When the moon reached the zenith, Hugo Hu took Yi Shukui to the deserted graves of Shisanlipu. The female corpse had been waiting for a long time. She cursed Hugo Hu a few times and could not wait to grab Zhao Kui. She stretched out her claws to take out her heart and liver and swallowed it. The female corpse suddenly screamed strangely and tore Zhao Kui's body into pieces. At this time, Zhao Kui had revealed her true form. It turned out that Mr. Sun had used his own way to treat him. This fake Zhao Kui was also a paper figure. The real Zhao Kui had been left somewhere else by Mr. Sun. The heart that the female corpse ate was a black donkey hoof in a paper figure. This thing is the best to ward off evil spirits, especially to restrain monsters such as zombies that have transformed into corpses. There are several schools of tomb robbery. The tomb robbers in the Jiangnan area have to put 2 black donkey hooves in their arms when they work. This method comes from the secret technique of Mao Shan. The details will be discussed later, so I won't explain it in detail here. The demon ate the black donkey hoof and knew that he had been tricked by the other party. In a rage, he also wanted to tear Hugo Hu into pieces, but Hugo Hu had already dodged far away. The female corpse howled to the sky, and her clothes turned into ashes one by one. Her flesh turned into blood. Not long after, only a white skeleton was left lying on the ground. Mr. Sun saw it clearly from a distance and hurried over. He found a red pill the size of a chicken egg in the skeleton and ordered Hugo Hu to eat it. Hugo Hu's heart and liver finally returned to the old place. The two worked together to put the white bones on the ground into the big red coffin. Just as they were about to cover the coffin, the skull suddenly jumped up and opened its mouth to spit out a black mist at Mr. Sun. Mr. Sun was a little careless and was caught off guard. He was sprayed directly and felt a burst of cold corpse gas choking his chest and blood surging. But he had been through many dangers, so he was not panicked at all. He pushed the coffin shut with force, took out the long nails and nailed it tightly, and used the ink fountain to draw crisscross lines on the coffin. The lines formed a black net like the grids on a go board, sealing the coffin tightly. Mr. Sun had just been hit by the zombie's Yun Qi and was seriously injured. After all this busy work, he sat on the ground and couldn't move, so he asked Hugo Hu to pile up some dead firewood and burn the big red lacquer coffin. Hugo Hu obeyed the order, lit a fire, and set the coffin on fire. The flames rose fiercely, and black smoke came out, which was smelly. Finally, it was all burned to ashes. Hugo Hu then remembered that there were many gold and silver jewels in the coffin. He stamped his feet and sighed, regretting it too late. He had to support his master Mr. Sun and pick up Zhao Kui to live together in Mr. Sun's home. After that, Mr. Sun cured Hugo Hu's addiction to smoking with a secret recipe and taught him some skills of feng shui and fortune-telling. Hugo Hu set up a small stall in the county town, told fortunes for people, made some money, and married Zhao Kui. He was grateful for his master's life-saving grace, and from then on he lived a law-abiding life. And his life got better day by day. However, Mr. Sun had never recovered since he was sprayed by corpse gas, and the coldness of the corpse poison penetrated his bones. He died a few years later. Before his death, Mr. Sun called Hugo Hu to him and said, "You and I are a master and apprentice, but I have not had time to teach you any real skills. I have an ancient book, 16-character yin-yang feng shui secret technique, here. This book is a fragment, only half a volume, and it is just some small techniques of feng shui and tomb finding. You can keep it with you as a memorial." After saying that, he didn't catch his breath and passed away. Hugo Hu buried his master, and when he had nothing to do, he studied the incomplete book left by Mr. Sun. Over time, he also got a glimpse of some mysteries. He chose good burial sites for rich people in the county, and gradually became famous, and his family property gradually became rich. Zhao Kui gave Hugo Hu a son named Hu Yongchuan. When Hu Yongchuan was 17 years old, he went to study at the British Church School in the provincial capital. The young man was active and unrestrained. At the same time, he was exposed to the impact of some revolutionary thoughts. His blood was boiling. He dreamed of participating in revolutionary riots every night, so he ran away from home and went to Yan'an, the holy land of revolution. After that, Hu Yongchuan joined the army. Until the founding of the People's Republic of China, during the Huai campaign, he had become the head of a regiment of the 6th Column of the 3rd Field Army. After the crossing the Yangtze River campaign, he followed the troops to the south and settled down in the south. Then I was born. I was born on the August 1st Army Day. My father named me Hu Jianjun. But when I went to kindergarten, I saw that there were 7 or 8 students named Jianjian in the class. There were too many people with the same name, so my father changed my name to August Hu. My grandfather Hugo Hu said, "This name is a good change. It is a combination of 80,000 and 100,000. When I was 18 years old, my family was shocked. First, the leaders of San Yesi fell, and then gradually implicated. In addition, my parents were not from a good family. He and my mother were isolated and investigated. My grandfather was also dragged out to be criticized and paraded as a demon. He was old, and his old arms and legs were too weak to struggle. He died after only 2 rounds of struggle. He had been reading feng shui for others all his life and choosing cemeteries for others. He was cremated at the end of his life. Things in the world are so impermanent. My home was searched 3 times in total, and all valuable things were confiscated. My grandfather liked to collect antiques when he was alive, and these antiques were either smashed or confiscated, and none of them were saved. In the end, the only thing left was a broken book left by my grandfather. He asked me to wrap the book in oilcloth and hide it on the roof of a public toilet so that it was spared. During the Cultural Revolution, young people had three choices after graduation. One was to join the army, which was the best place to go. One was to train people, and the other was to be assigned a job after demobilization. The second was to stay in the city as a worker, which was also good and could earn a salary. The most unfortunate were those who had no connections, or whose families were affected. These young people could only go to the countryside to work in the fields. You want to say that I can choose the fourth way, not go anywhere, and stay at home. Is it okay? That's not possible. There was no idle person at that time. Everyone was a screw of socialism and had a use. If you stay at home, the neighborhood committee, school, and educated youth office will come to mobilize you every day. However, some people persisted to the end and did not go to the countryside. What can you do to me? In the end, such people stayed in the city and were arranged to work. This is how things are in China. It is hard to explain. The more you live, the more confused you become. You will never know what the rules are, and not everyone understands the unspoken rules. At that time, I was too young and didn't know what it was like to go to the countryside. Anyway, I had no hope of joining the army for a family like mine. No one would arrange a job for me if I stayed in the city. If I didn't go to the countryside, there was no other place to go. I decided to go to the countryside. I thought it was a vast world to temper my red heart. Anyway, I was leaving home, and the farther I went, the better. Most of us chose to go to Yunnan and Xinjiang to work in the countryside. I chose to go to Inner Mongolia. My buddy Kai Wang also chose to work in the countryside. He was whiter and fatter than ordinary people, so his nickname was Biggie Wang. The place where we worked in the countryside was called Jingjue. I had never heard of this place before. It was not until they told me that we were going to Jingjue that I knew there was such a place in the world. When we left home by train, no one came to see us off. Compared with the warm farewell scenes of those who went to join the army, the scene of our leaving home was a bit miserable and tragic. I only brought with me the 16-character yin-yang feng shui secret art, hidden on the roof of the public toilet. I don't know what book it is, but it is the only thing left in my family. I want to carry it with me so that I can take it out and read it when I miss home.